Hey guys, I am Nishan and I have a great news for you. And that is React 19 beta is now available on NPM. And in this video, let's see the new features in React 19 and how we can use them. The first one is known as actions. So previously, a common use case in a React app was to perform a data mutation and update the state in response. For example, we have an input element and one button. Basically, we are calling API of update name, where the name getting passed in here. So if error is true, set it to error state, else redirect to path. So this was how we did things before. Also, we're having a state of is pending. And once we click the button, it will be disabled until the API call is complete. So it will be disabled because we are setting it to true, and after API call it will be to false and the button will be disabled. But in React 19 we are having a support for using async functions in transition to handle states, errors, forms and optimistic updates automatically. We can use this new hook called use transition to handle pending state for us. So we just need to use transition, and the structure is pending, which is a pending state, and start transition, which is a function. So we need to wrap our API call in the start transition function, which will produce an error like this. So if we have an error, set it to error state, else push it to this path. Now if the API call is not complete, this will be true, but once it is complete, this will be false, which is now handled by React in itself. We need to pass is pending through to the button directly. We don't need to create a new state for pending states like this, or like we did previously like this. On top of that, we have another hook called use optimistic, which can handle error, submit action, is pending states all in itself. So we can have use action state, and we can wrap our API call inside to have error states or action states or is pending, which is a improvement over this previous hook that I talked about. So this is how we can use it. Error will be from this API call, and if we have an error, simply return this error, else push it to this path and return nothing. The next feature is known as form actions. So actions are also integrated in React 19's new form feature for React DOM. We have added support for passing functions as actions and form action as props of form input and button elements automatically to submit form with actions. So previously what happened was, if we have a form, we need to use onSubmit to handle our submit form action. Now we don't need to use onSubmit. We just need to have action. And now when a form is submitted, React will automatically reset the form for uncontrolled components. We don't need to set it one by one as empty. So this was new form actions. Now we have this use form status. In design systems, it is common to write design components that need to access the information about the form they are in. So like this, we have a use form status, which will give the status of a pending form. This can be done via context, but to make the common case easier, we have a new hook called use form status, which will handle our pending form status. This next hook that we're having is known as use optimistic in React 19. So another common UI pattern when performing a data mutation is to show the final state optimistically while the sync request is underway, which basically means show our final state optimistically or be optimistic. So example is, let's say that we're having a like button and we like a post. When we like a post, we will send a request to the backend server and it will fetch the response in return. Then we update our front end or the UI according to the response that we're getting from the backend, which can take some time or it can be delayed according to our network speeds or maybe some other stuff. In that case, that will not be a great user experience when we like a post and the results come after 5 seconds. In this case, we have a new hook in React 19 called use optimistic. That basically means to be optimistic and update the state. So when we like a post or anything on Twitter or Facebook, we will update the state that that post has been liked. See here, performing a data mutation is to show the final state optimistically while the request is underway. So in advance, we will file the final state optimistically even if the request is underway or ongoing, using this new hook called use optimistic in React 19. The new feature is known as use API. So in React 19, we are introducing a new API to read resources in render. For example, we are having this function called comments, which is taking a promise of comments promise. We can use this use API to resolve this promise and store the data in this comments. So in this comments, we have the new data from this promise and we can simply map through the comments and show whatever we want. Now, the great thing about this is it will suspend until the promise resolves. So when we are not resolving the promise or when the promise is not resolved, we will be on the fallback. But once the promise is resolved, we will show the comments. We can also read contexts with use. So we have a theme context here and we can read the value from this context in this theme variable. And then we can simply return anything which is inside the context API, which can be a color or anything else. But the biggest change in React 19 is the React compiler. So the React compiler is no longer a research project. The compiler now powers Instagram.com in production. And we are planning to ship the compiler across additional services at Meta and to prepare the first open source release. So previously in React, our component could re-render too much when the state changes, and we have to handle that using things known as use memo, use callback, or memo APIs to tune our React re-renders on state changes. But it is a compromise and it can clutter our code. So once React compiler is in production, we don't need to have use callback, use memo, or anything like that to memorize our data or component. This compiler will do it automatically in production or in development as well to memorize or cache functions and values on the go. Now let's talk about some improvements in React 19. So the first one is known as ref as a prop. So new functions component will no longer need to use forward ref, and we will be publishing a code mod to automatically update the components to use the new ref prop. So in the future version, we will not have to use forward ref, which means if we have to pass a reference from parent to child, we can simply pass it as props. The next one is called context as a provider. It means now we don't need to use context.provider, but context simply will work like this. So this will now be deprecated. We just need to use context as a provider, not context.provider. Plus, we also have a cleanup function for references using useRef. So when the component unmounts, React will call the cleanup function returned from the ref callback. This works from DOM references, refs to class components, and use imperative handle hooks. Now we can also use title, link, and meta in a component like this. Suppose we have a blog post component and we have an article that we're returning. We can use title for the title of the post, metadata handling like author name, Twitter handle, or keywords, which is now supported in React 19. So in React 19, we are adding support for rendering document metadata tags in the components natively. which was previously done by a library known as React Helmet. And these were the changes that we are getting in React 19 version. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.